Okay, I listened to a message yesterday by a fellow Christian, and she said at the end of the message to sow the seed with others. And so I'm trying to do that here. It's a really good message that came to me when I reflected on it. So in the story of Nehemiah, right? Nehemiah is known as a cupbearer. What is a cupbearer in ancient times? So a cupbearer is somebody that's loyal and dedicated to the royal household, and there's somebody that's willing to eat and drink the food, eat the food and then also drink from the goblet before the king does, to make sure that they're not going to be poisoned, right? So Nehemiah was known for being a loyal servant, right, to the royal household, and he was very dedicated and committed, and he protected the king, right? And he was always about making sure that the king was covered, and in so doing, God covered him as well. He never ended up being poisoned. At one point, Nehemiah decided, he talked to the king and he said, I'd like to go to Jerusalem, and I would like to cover those people as well. I'd like to stand in the gap rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem so that those people will be defended and they'll be protected, right? So then he heads off to Jerusalem. This is kind of a crazy idea. He just heads up there and he's like, hey guys, let's get together and let's build these walls back so you guys will be defended and protected against anybody that comes to harm you, right? And I think within like 52 weeks, right, they built all the walls of Jerusalem, rebuilt them back. Nehemiah was literally standing in the gap for these people, spear in one hand, brick in the other, and he was building the temple back. Not the temple, but the walls of Jerusalem back to protect the people. So Nehemiah was covering the people just like he had been as a cupbearer covering the king. And because he did that, while he was standing there in the gap with the spear in one hand and the brick in the other, God was covering him as well. So I wanted to talk about this, how in the Bible there's a lot of people that do the same thing. If you look at Nehemiah's name, right, God deals in opposites. So you look at his name, and what are the letters that stand out if you flip it around, right? Human. Right? Nehemiah, human. He was doing the opposite of being human. He was doing the opposite of acting in his human ways. He was ascending. He was acting on a self-sacrifice path where he was dedicated to the divine and to the word of the divine. And he was acting in an almost divine way, like we are created in the image of God, right? So he had ascended to a path where he was helping others. He was covering others. And in so doing, he was covered by God. So there's a lot of stories in the Bible in which people are covering others, and in so doing, they're covered by God, right? So Hagar, she goes out into the desert with Ishmael, right? And right before Ishmael is about to pass away, she covers him with a bush to protect him from the sun. And suddenly an angel comes down, and the angel covers Hagar and Ishmael, right? Protects her. And also Joseph and Mary, they had the massacre of the innocents, and they fled to Egypt to protect Jesus. And God covered them at that time too. You have Ruth, who was protecting her relatives by being out in the field every day. I'm sure that wasn't an easy feat to do. And yet she was covered by God when Boaz showed up, right? And then you have other stories like Hannah. Hannah gave over her son to the temple, Samuel, right? I'm sure that wasn't an easy thing to do. She was covering her son by giving him to the temple. And in so doing, God covered Hannah and blessed her as well. There's a lot of stories in the Bible of people that covered other people, and in so doing, they were covered by God. So I just share this message to you about the cupbearer and how important it is in our lives to consider being a cupbearer, to ascend the right path of self-sacrifice for others, looking out for others, being loyal and dedicated and committed to them and protecting them. And in so doing, God will protect you. Okay, thank you. That's the message for today.